Story came out earlier this week, and I've heard Colin Cowherd try to carry the water for USC on it.
Shout out, Colin.
Lincoln Riley trying to get out of USC's game against LSU to start off the season in Vegas.
They tried to do it 2 years ago.
Yeah, and
The second he got there, he wanted out of it. And I feel two ways about it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it on one end, in the sense of the way the schedule was going and knowing that you're going to go to the Big Ten, because they had a pretty good understanding when he took the job of what was going to happen, because he got there and they left for the Big Ten, 2 months later?
Mm-hmm.
If that, if I remember right, remembering the timeline right. So I would imagine that the AD probably clued him in as to where that was going. But the flip side of that is, like, you should sign up for these kind of games for the marquee matchups. And I get the argument against it because and we'll talk about this later. The SEC is out there only playing 8 conference games anyways. So why add another one for you when they're not going to do that? And the position that puts you in. So I can see it both ways. And then there's the other part of it, which I don't know how much USC is playing into this. I'm going to imagine they are as a business partner, knowing that the SEC is the ESPN turf, whereas the Big Ten is Fox. And because Fox did get involved in this process and tried to get them out of it as well.
I think that when you look at it, because, well, they don't want their first game being on ESPN. But at the same time, I look at it more as you're USC.
Yeah, then that's where I fall on the whole, like, play anyone who's in front of you.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
you are, like, that's the whole point.
You're one of, 2 schools that has never played an FCS opponent, right? Like, you've always hung your hat on that. And
the
idea that it makes your path easier to get to the college football playoff if you don't play LSU at the beginning of the year, that's also ridiculous, because if you play, the whole purpose of having, like, the 12-team playoff is you can suffer some losses. Yeah. It's how good do you look? And what you're trying to duck is the fact that, all right, we're not going to look that good. Well, and you're kind of signaling that.
2 years ago, I think.
2 years ago.
You're not talking about the 12-team playoff, though.
But they were. They absolutely were.
Well, no, but they didn't think it was going to be this year.
You are sitting there and looking at the idea that, our path is going to be easier. No, your path's going to be hard no matter what, because you're USC. Now Colin is like, you don't have to play Notre Dame. Why play Notre Dame anymore? Because it's a rivalry game. Yes. Rivalry games are what make college football great.
That one I don't. That's going ridiculous. Away is very stupid. Also, Notre Dame should not get an invite to anything after seeing their schedule, for the love of God. That is one of the most insanely soft schedules I've ever seen, and the fact that they're somehow going to get some sort of automatic consideration is absolutely bonkers.
Well, they have to be in the top 12.
Yeah, they better be. Good Lord. Oregon State's schedule is going to be tougher this year.
Well, you got to play USC. They got Stanford.
Yeah.
They got SC. Who else do they have? Who does Notre Dame play this year?
Oh, God.
Usually it's pretty tough.
Normally, yes, it's not.
Oh, well, hey, go ahead and do it. Like, then they have A&M, which is an okay game. Purdue, Stanford, Louisville, Miami, Ohio, Northern Illinois. Yeah, that's not a great schedule this year.
Georgia Tech, Navy, Virginia, Army.
Yeah, Florida State, USC. I mean, they'll have 1, 2, 3, maybe four ranked opponents. You'll have 4 ranked opponents with A&M. Louisville should be ranked this year. Florida State should be ranked this year, and USC should be ranked this year. I mean,
and the ones that aren't,
are
some
not
of the worst teams in the country.
Very good.
It's not even like there's a little something there. It's like, no, it's horrendous. But back to USC, I did not like the fact that this came. Not that it came out. I did not like the fact that they were pursuing this.
Yeah, it's a weird
thing. I was like, really? This is dumb.
But at the same time, like, when he took over at USC, and this started, 2 years ago or whatever, what I find interesting is that it continued up to a couple of months ago, to where they were actively pursuing it, and LSU's just like, no. Like, we're not going to move out of this game. And you make the good point of the SEC only plays 8 conference games, so this is basically a 9th game that helps bolster their schedule a little bit more, and it gives you a big win early. I think that with USC being where they are just a couple of months ago, even trying to get out of this, they're sitting there going, it's going to take our defense time.
Yep.
And it
And they
will.
didn't want this right
And
out of the gate because it's an entirely new defense, an entirely new staff.
And they are going to get dragged
By-
in recruiting
yes.
if LSU goes and mops the floor with them.
Which I
and it's physical up front.
I expect to happen.
So it's a really weird time with USC because they have improved a lot of their weaknesses and a lot of their holes. But any time that you're losing as much in the skill positions, and obviously when you lose number 1 overall draft pick in Caleb Williams, it's going to be an interesting year to see if the magic is still there for Lincoln Riley, especially heading into the Big Ten, where they got a very tough schedule that is in front of them, and you're going to be going to cold weather places late in the season, which we know on the West Coast, it was always, you want USC coming up to Oregon, going up to Washington in late October and November because they're a completely different team then. Now you're going to be heading to the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
That's
the cold
be
bites a little bit more.
Whole different level of cold there.
Yeah, watching how, and everyone's like, well, Washington's used to playing in the cold. No, you're not.
You think they're going to have
Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA going to the Wisconsins and Penn States of the world in late November? It's different.
Do you remember the video last year before they came to Oregon of the guy with the little sprinkler sprinkling the footballs
water.
and the punt returners? Do you think they're going to be there like
snow machine,
liquid nitrogen, just spraying it in the air?
Yeah, it's gonna be. It's not full on like the Miami Dolphins traveling above the Mason-Dixon line, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. They're not used to it, and it's gonna. And it was like, well, Oregon and Washington will be fine. No, they won't. It's a level of cold that is different in the Midwest. You hit that Wisconsin, Northwestern, hell, Michigan. Penn State, like those schools in late November, man. Like,
yeah, but at least you can get down to at least the 50s or 40s here.
Yeah,
But
I'm talking about when it starts snowing and it starts biting.
They don't have to go anywhere really late in the year though. They have Notre Dame at home. They go on the road to UCLA. Nebraska's at home. November 2nd, they go up to Seattle.
No, I'm talking about like historically, just going through the Big Ten.
Other than that, in future years, it's going to be worse. This year's not going to be that bad for them.
No, USC's travel schedule is not as bad as it could have been this year. Next year, I bet it's going to be a gauntlet.
Next year, going to Nebraska in mid-November and Notre Dame in late November might be different.
Yeah, and honestly, Nebraska's another one where you don't think about it getting cold, and by God, does it get otherworldly cold there?
Yeah, it does. It's chilly willy. All right, so USC, stop ducking people.
Yeah,
all
it's
right,
very dumb.
Come on, you're USC for God's sakes.